Are you building a development and wondering what needs to go on your risk register? After more than 15 years in the field, I've seen single unit builds to billion-pound projects unravel over the same common risks. So today, let me show you the 10 risks that you need to look for and exactly how to avoid them so your next build can stay on track. Risk number 1 highlights why proceeding with caution is so important. Imagine you've purchased a great plot of land and you're planning to build 8 houses on it and sell each one for £800,000. But as you start to do the maths, you realize that selling them at 800k each is really expensive for the area and barely makes you any profit. So now you've got some really expensive land and your project's a complete no-go. That's why it's so important to make the numbers work before you get started. So risk number 1 is an inaccurate feasibility assessment. Failing to conduct an accurate feasibility can lead to unrealistic projections, resulting in financial shortfalls and even project abandonment. Do not skip this step and do not purchase land before you've produced a feasibility and studied it to ensure that it generates income. And risk number 2 is going to explain why you always need a contingency. Imagine you're setting out to row across the Atlantic. You've calculated the exact distance from A to B and even how many calories you'll need, and you've completely ignored the height of the waves, and halfway across, ocean starts to turn choppy. Now, how do you think that journey is gonna end? That's why it's imperative you have a plan that accounts for reality and not just the best case scenario. So risk number 2 is the most common, and it's budget overruns. Failing to budget accurately can ruin profits and even erode the quality of your build when you're forced into constant value engineering just to try and make the numbers work. So plan accordingly and leave margin for errors. Risk number 3 is another that requires a margin for error. Whilst working in London, I recall one of my colleagues working on a high-rise residential building that was 6 months delayed due to them being unable to get the entire building connected to the closest mains power supply. It always seems to be Murphy's Law with building that anything that can go wrong often will go wrong. So make sure you always prepare for risk. Number 3 is timeline delays. Inaccurate scheduling from the outset can cause delays of up to months. From weather disruptions to contractors going bust, there's a laundry list of potential delays that can impact the overall delivery, as well as your profits and, if applicable, stakeholder confidence. Risk number 4 is going to highlight why you need to play by the rule. Imagine you've spent months training for a marathon and you're finally at the starting line. Your heart is racing, you're ready to go. But just as the gun fires, an official pulls you aside because your shoes don't meet a specific technical requirement that you never bothered to check. You've done all the hard work, but you're stuck at the start line while everyone else disappears into the distance. So that's why it's important to verify the rules before you start building. Risk number 4 is to ensure regulatory compliance. Failing to navigate the local zoning laws, building codes, or even environmental permits can lead to massive fines, forced redesigns, or even total project shutdown. Don't add a preventable risk to your list of potential delays. Picture this: your project is underway, your foundations are built, and you're set to start on the superstructure when the news hits that your steel supplier suddenly can't deliver. This is a prime example of why a robust procurement strategy isn't just a nice to have. Yes, risk number 5 is supply chain disruptions. Volatility in material sourcing and logistics affects over 1/3 of projects and can lead to increased costs and extended timeline during the construction phase. So you need to either have absolute confidence in your suppliers or ensure you have contingencies. Just a quick note, if you're watching and enjoying this content, to please subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Next up is risk number 6. Imagine you've invited the most important investors for a 5-course meal to celebrate closing a deal. You've bought the finest Wagyu beef, the best wine, and the table is perfectly set. But 20 minutes before they arrive, you realize the private chef you hired is double booked and he isn't coming. You have all the ingredients for success sitting right there, but you don't have a specialist skill to turn them into a delicious meal. This scenario exposes a massive gap between having the resources on site and actually having the hands to install them. So risk number 6 is labor and skills shortages. Insufficient workforce planning results in productivity losses and quality compromises, contributing 40% of operational risk across all construction projects. So ensure you've locked in your specialist trades and verified their ability, with certain teams not being able to start on site before the others have finished. Any delays need to be regularly monitored and communicated as quickly as possible. Risk number 7 shows us why ignorance isn't always bliss. I once had a site visit on a Friday afternoon, and I arrived just as the team were packing up. Everyone was tired and they'd left a small little unsecure gap in the scaffolding, something they had planned to fix first thing on Monday morning. Unfortunately, on the Sunday evening, there was an absolute gale, a really heavy wind that caught the boards, and by Monday morning, the site was crawling with inspectors. The gates were padlocked and the project was completely frozen. That one small shortcut had just cost us weeks of projects, and we were the lucky ones because nobody was actually on the site when they started to drop. This shows that in construction, what you don't see or choose to ignore is exactly what will stop your project in its tracks. In the UK, construction still accounts for the job with the most amount of fatalities reported every single year. Risk number 7 is safety hazards. Accidents on site cause immediate shutdowns, delays, legal fines, and impact your insurance. Not to mention, they can totally devastate the victims' lives and sometimes often be fatal. So make sure you take your health and safety seriously. Have a health and safety officer on site reporting weekly, or if you can, daily. Next is risk number 8. So pretend you've just spent months restoring a classical car. It looks perfect, the engine sounds great, and you finally handed the keys over to the new owner. And then a week later, they call you because a door handle fell off or the heater won't turn on, and you realize that you never gave them the service history or a spare set of keys. You thought the job was done when the money hit your account, but now you're spending every weekend fixing small annoyances for free. This illustrates the long tail of a project where the lack of attention to the final details can turn a successful exit into a never-ending series of disputes. Risk number 8 is handover and post-construction defects. Incomplete closeout procedures like missing warranty documentation, poor operation and maintenance manuals, or rushed final inspections can often lead to legal disputes and massive additional costs after you've technically completed the build. So hand over diligently. Don't keep paying for the mistake of your last project. So now you have a list of some of the most common risks that can impact your project. But just being aware of all these risks is not enough. If you want to know about risk management in construction, then watch this video here. If you want to download our free risk register and see a demo of how to fill it out, then watch this video here.